So Chris called me and said, let's do this. He said, we got this awesome AV package. We have a 65-foot by 20-foot AV setup. I said, wicked, let's strip it down and not use it at all. Let's not bring any videos, no talking points on the monitor. Let's just have a stripped down conversation about what the hell's going on at Tim Hortons and who this parent company RBI is. So quick background on me, 9 years in government, worked for Frank McKenna in New Brunswick, worked for the Prime Minister when I was 24, moved to agency, did 6 years in agency in Ottawa and Toronto, then went to Canadian Tire for 9 years and spent 2.5 of those as president of Sport Check, lived here in Calgary, skied Lake Louise every weekend, loved it. Then I met the folks from Restaurant Brands. Totally fell in love with this company and this culture. So before we get right into Tim Hortons, I want to get into RBI. So I'll talk about culture in a minute. Let's go straight business model. I can never figure something out until I understand how it makes money. Here's how RBI makes money. We own 3 amazing, iconic brands, Burger King, Popeyes, Tim Hortons. We're in 110 countries around the world. We don't pay when a restaurant gets built. We get franchisees, usually master franchisees, usually people with a lot of money or private equity firms who will take the entire market of Germany or the entire market of Russia or the UK, and they'll build out 400 or 500 Burger Kings or commit to do 1,000 Popeyes in China. So last year, we did $34 billion of sales in 27,000 restaurants. We take a royalty on top of that, so our revenue is about $5.5 billion. Those same franchisees pay into an advertising fund. So every month as we grow, and we're opening a new restaurant every 7 hours somewhere on the planet. So every single month, those franchisees are paying into an advertising fund. We manage the advertising fund. So our revenue grows at high single digits. Our expenses grow at low single digits. So we've got incredible free cash flow. We did about $2.5 billion EBITDA last year, and very little capital. So free cash flow last year was about $1.4 billion. So what do you do with all the money? You pay down your debt. You increase your dividend so more people want to buy your stock. You buy back shares if you think they're undervalued. You buy new restaurant companies like we did in 2015 with Tim Hortons and like we did in 2017 with Popeyes. And that's the business model. Super fun business model. This is also one of the few truly global companies that's headquartered in Canada, in Toronto. And one of the things that excited me was being able, after having spent my whole life focused on Canadian brands in Canada and the geography of Canada, to be able to take a role where I get to play across 110 countries globally, but still have half the business being in Canada with Tim Hortons. And what you see on the map here is the gap to our competitors. So you go, what's the growth? So we went out and told people 6 months ago, at our current rate of growth, we're going to hit 40,000 restaurants within 8 or 9 years. It'll make us one of the biggest restaurant companies on the planet. And if you look at something like Popeyes, if any of you have kind of followed the Popeyes chicken sandwich thing in the US that blew up, we think head-to-head we have a better product than our competitors. In Asia, KFC has 11,000 restaurants. 6 months ago, we had 120 Popeyes. So when you look around the world, the growth opportunity is massive. So for such a good business model, how the hell did this happen? And in 2015, Burger King bought Tim Hortons, created a new company called RBI. So worth noting, RBI is 5 years old. One of the things to understand about it is it's a startup in almost every way you could imagine. So even in 2017, when we bought Popeyes, globally, supporting 27,000 restaurants, we only have 1,300 people. Culturally, we've got super, super small teams. Like the loyalty program that was just launched at Tim Hortons was done with like 8 people, versus some companies that would hire up 500 people and millions of dollars of consultants. We do things with really tight internal teams, and we hire outside when we need it. So how do we get to here? And there's a lot of answers, but I'll give you the one big answer. RBI, as it existed in 2015, was not ready to deal with the incredibly decentralized, grassroots, franchisee nature of the business in Canada. So go to UK for Burger King. There's one master franchisee, has 400 or 500 Burger Kings in the UK. They have their own operations team, their own marketing team. They have their own office. We roll in 4 times a year. We do a really thorough full-day board meeting. We go through all of their analytics, all their KPIs, make sure they're on track. We leave. So RBI 1.0 in 2015 shows up, and day one, Jimmy calls and says, I just got my latest truck delivery and the lettuce is frozen. RBI guys go, I don't know what to do about that. And the next day someone says, my panini press is broken and Bob hasn't shown up in 4 days. What do I do? The way that RBI was set up, it was not set up to manage 1,500 franchisees owning 4,000 restaurants. And admittedly, we made mistakes. Admittedly, we did not manage the franchisees well. That resulted in the franchisees taking on their own issues. It ended up in a media war. Culturally, up until last year, RBI never spoke publicly. No executive profile interviews, no public speaking on stage. Even for a period of time when media were to call, any media that covered RBI back in the day would attest to this, they'd get sent to the media line, which was a voicemail that didn't get checked for 5 years. And so what happened is, when the media blew up, there was a one-sided story out there with the franchisees. RBI wasn't telling its own story. Tim's wasn't telling its own story. And this is what we got. So over the course of the last 18 months, we've started a big turnaround in getting the Tim's business back on track. Over the course of the last 12 months, we've started a major team rebuild in Toronto, specifically around the Tim's team. But I'll say the lessons that we learned going through this period of time has fundamentally changed the RBI that exists today, what I'd call RBI 2.0. So we're actually doing an offsite with our most senior team. So if you think about 1,300 people globally, we pull together the top 10%. So 130 people getting together. These are the values that the entire day is based on that we're going to be doing next month. You know, the first is, you know, life is too short for small dreams. One of the things that we do is push people to have incredibly big, ambitious dreams, big aspirations. So take Burger King. A year ago, our CMO at Burger King, Fernando Machado, probably one of the most decorated marketers on the planet, he said, I think we should eliminate all artificial ingredients and artificial colors and artificial flavors from the Burger King menu, period. And he was told it can't be done. He was told it's going to cost $400 million. He was told franchisees are going to rebel. And now in multiple global markets, we are entirely free of artificial flavors and ingredients. In the US, we have 400 out of 7,500 Burger King restaurants that are totally free, and we're aiming to be totally free by the end of the year. In fact, when you leave here today, Google Moldy Whopper. It's the US spelling, M-O-L-D-Y, but Moldy Whopper. And again, it's kind of edgy, big thinking marketing that we're doing, saying, look, do you know what real food looks like? This is what real food looks like if you slow film it for 34 days. And it's covered in mold. And it's gorgeous and beautiful when you look at it. And we've got like the New York Times and CNN saying, are these people crazy? They're putting up billboards of their lead product covered in mold. And we're saying, that's right. Now Google what our competitor's product looks like over 30, 60 days. And there's lots of videos out there that shows it looks pretty much the same. So when we say dream big a year ago, we said eliminate artificial ingredients. Everyone said impossible. Tim Hortons, we got a cup issue at Tim Hortons. We sell 5 million hot beverage cups a day, 2.2 billion or more per year. We did the math. If you were to stack 2.2 billion cups end to end, it would wrap the planet 17 times in one year. And all of our competitors are chasing a more recyclable cup. And we looked at it, and increasingly what's happening is our cup is fully recyclable, period. Most municipalities are choosing not to recycle any of the single-use cups for a whole bunch of reasons, including economics. So we said, we think that the future of the planet, future of the country, is to create a generation of consumers that could never imagine using and tossing a cup just once. But that's pure consumer behavior. So we went out and said, we're going to launch a 10-year sustained marketing campaign to change Canadian behaviors on reusable cups. And again, when people go, that's crazy, you're never going to do it, Sobeys is eliminating plastic bags from grocery stores. There was a period when most of our parents happily drove around without wearing seatbelts. I'm a dual citizen, Canadian and Australian. My grandmother in Australia spent the first half of her life smoking and sunbathing and ended up dying of lung cancer and skin cancer. So through the generations, there have been consumer behaviors that were okay and then not okay. And we've said, look, we're going to dream big. We're going to change Canadians' views on reusable cups. And this morning we launched the 35th Roll Up the Rim campaign. And one of the things that's in it is if you use a reusable cup and use your app, we'll give you 3 digital rolls to thank you for using reusable cups. And we're kicking off the campaign by giving out 1.8 million free reusable cups. But culturally, thank you. Culturally, in every single thing we do in our culture, as soon as someone sets a target, the leadership team usually goes 4x on the target. And everything starts with, that's impossible, it can't be done. And it always works its way back to, well, the only way it could be done is if we did the following, which means changing everything. Then we change everything. You value things more when you own them. This is probably the single biggest difference between RBI and any other company I've come across in working for 25 years. You often hear about companies that say, we want you to act like an owner, think like an owner, but they don't treat you like an owner. You get your base salary, you get whatever bonus you get. We have such a small group of people, and the next one is, the third one here is all about accountability and outcomes. In our shop, outcomes matter more than effort. You can try really, really hard. If we give you a big dream, you're in charge of doing it, you've got a small team, you're fully accountable for it, run with it, and we'll support you. And the people that deliver on that become substantial owners in the company. We have a bonus program where if you trade half your bonus at the end of the year for company stock, we'll match you at 100, 150, 175% to help get you into the stock and become an owner. Top performers in the company get meaningful, life-changing equity grants. 1,300 people. The top 130 people have an average age of 38 or 39, and every single one of those people have a stock portfolio in the 7 or 8 figures in the company. So when I say that we are owners of the business, in every sense of the word, I mean it. And what that means culturally is no one sits around talking about stupid stuff that doesn't matter. No one cares who gets the parking spot. No one cares if you were CC'd or putting the 2 line on the email. It doesn't matter. You agree on business outcomes, you get super clear on what they are, and you deliver them, and the people that do the best job get more equity. And if you look at the history of our stock price, when 3G bought Burger King in 2010, Shares were worth about $3. Took Burger King public in 2012 at $12. Bought Tim's and went back public again with RBI, all in US here dollars, at around $40. Bought Popeyes and today is around $65. So being an owner in the company with the kind of growth I showed you on the previous slide is life-changing, aside from the fact it's super rewarding that you don't have to deal with bullshit every day. And there's no bureaucracy. And when you're given a task, you deliver it, or you don't. But it's that easy. The benefit of being in 110 countries with 110 presidents and CEOs all feeding in, diversity is built into the company. A wide range of views, cultures, languages, thought processes. That's how the company grew up. And admittedly, we've done a ton of work in the last year to double down on diversity and inclusion inside of our workplaces, and we're doing a lot better at that. Finding ways to do things better, this is creativity. And it's easy to talk about creativity to marketers. This is find ways to do things differently to make them better in every single part of the business. If we convince half the country to go to reusable cups, we have an operational shit show ahead of us in our drive-through windows at Tim Hortons, where 2/3 of our business is. So we look at the ops team to say, you need to find a way to still hit a 25-second window time in a drive-through with a reusable cup. And then they go, well, it's impossible. Well, I got to rinse it. Well, you'd have to be filling it while you're paying for it. There'd have to be an outside dispensary. You go, cool, but you need to find a way to operationally serve half of the drive-through with reusable cups without losing a second in your drive-through window. Find a way to do it differently to make it better. It's bled into the entire company. And the final one is really simple. Hardworking, good person. If you Google RBI, you're going to see, man, these people work all the time. I'm going to tell you, we work all the time. But that's because we're owners in the business. And because of what I explained about equity, we wake up every morning, we go to bed every night. I'm on the phone at midnight every night with my partners saying, what are we doing about this? What are we doing about this? It's all extremely personal to us. And the pitch for all the young folks that are coming in to join the company is, if you're looking for the 9-to-5 job, 9-to-6 job, 100% is not the place for you. If you're looking for the tight teams, more accountability at a young age than you will get anywhere else, bigger rewards more quickly than you will get anywhere else, and yeah, you may have to work a ton, this is the place for you. And be a good person. We just simply don't allow assholes in the company. Because we've all worked with them before, and it's not fun. And I would argue RBI 1.0 probably still allowed, as long as you got the job done, didn't matter how you do it. One of the big changes, even in our thinking of how we deal with our franchisees at Tim's, how you do things matters. And that goes to the notion of being a good person. So just shifting to Tim Hortons for a minute. So how does that influence the thinking of Tim Hortons? So as we've looked at the last year, we've said, okay, we need to kind of strip down the business. We need to get this back on track. We actually went and looked at all of the founding values of Tim Hortons. Said, what makes this company amazing? And we actually found, they weren't actually written down anywhere, but we interviewed tons of guys that were friends with Ron Joyce and people that have been in the business forever. These are the 5. Tim's from day one was obsessed with freshness and quality. And if you just take our core product, coffee, we've allowed competitors to get ahead of us. Competitors 5 years ahead of us updated their brewing technology, updated their packaging, updated water filtration, updated marketing. We haven't even been on TV or digital for 3 years talking about how good our quality of coffee is. We are now putting in water filtration. We're now updating all the brewing technology. We're going on a major focus for the next 18, 24 months of consistency in the quality of baked goods, breakfast, donuts, coffee. Second one was Tim's always just made things simple. You showed up, pretty quick service, got a coffee and a donut, and left. So in the restaurant business, the acronym LTO, limited time offer, they exist everywhere. You expect pumpkin spice in the fall, you expect candy cane at Christmas. We always did about 20 LTOs a year. 2 years ago, we did 40 LTOs. Last year, we did 60 LTOs. And frankly, it caused havoc with our suppliers and caused havoc with restaurant owners. Imagine out of 100,000 employees, if you even say half of them are part-time workers, you show up for your shift next week and there's 7 new things you need to learn how to make in the 5 minutes before your shift starts. It affects speed of service. Tim Hortons was doing burgers. So we said we need to simplify this and get back to the absolute best coffee, breakfast, baked goods, and donuts, and then grow from that core as we go forward. Giving back to communities, Tim has always done well at this. $30 million a year Children's Foundation, Timbit Sports, Smile Cookie, 1,500 owners who are giving back almost $60 million a year to Canadian communities. This is something that Tim's has always led in, but we can't rely on it for why you go to Tim's or not. It's something you expect the company to do, and it has always happened and is extremely important. Fourth is great value for money. And what you've seen recently with the updates to our loyalty program, and by the way, the loyalty program is insanely good value for money. You used to buy 8 coffees. Now you buy 7 coffees and get 1 free. Factually awesome, great value for money. Now we have said you're going to get points. We're going to open up the entire menu. You can bank your points and get whatever you want on the menu. And again, with the roll-up, as another example of value for money, if you think about it, last year for 4 or 6 weeks, you had a 1 in 6 chance of winning a coffee or a donut. Every single day, you're earning a 1 in 7 coffee or donut, on top of which we've just launched $30 million of new prizes in roll-up, where if you use digital, you get a roll, and again, if you do reusable, you get 3 rolls. You will continue to see us drive value for money. The final one, personal relationships matter, and it's so true in business. And this was a big lesson learned from the company of how we work with those 1,500 franchisees. We spend now 400 hours a year working with 19 owners that have been selected by the 1,500 owners to work with the company. We're now, as an executive team, going on the road 4 times this year, 2 weeks each time, doing sessions with all of the owners, really leaning in and showing them that we care about them as small business owners, and we care about their opinion because they've been here for a lot longer than many of us, and we need to build this together to be successful. So, getting the fundamentals right. We're going to move to Q&A. I'm right on time, which never happens in my life. I'll say this though, I had a couple of objectives today. One is I just wanted to give you a blunt explanation of what the heck is going on behind the scenes. So I'm not sure we've done the best job telling our own story in the media. So you end up seeing all this stuff saying, oh, the Brazilians have bought Tim Hortons, which is not true. You see Tim Hortons sold their coffee to McDonald's. Should have never done that. Fact, not true. Never sold our beans or the blend of our beans since 1964. But again, it's just a matter of telling the story. So I want you to have the unvarnished story. Number 2, in the spirit of outcomes I talked about earlier, why am I here? It's this simple. We're building a wicked, wicked team in RBI 2.0 and at Tim's. And this is one of the 4 conferences nationally a year that attracts some of the smartest, best talent in the country and also from the US. And as a clear outcome for me, I said to the CEO, if I can walk out of here and have 5 people from this room end up joining the company to do amazing things with us, then it was worth flying out here last night and flying back tomorrow morning. And so, by the way, find me on LinkedIn, because we are building an amazing team at the company. And I can tell you, as I said, in 25 years, I have never seen a more stripped down, straightforward ownership mentality in a company anywhere, including in all my consulting years. So Chris has a bunch of questions for me. I love tough questions, so feel free to put up your hand, ask me anything you want. Would love to hear from you. We already have one. Chris, we hit 0 right on the mark.
We'll switch this over. Have a seat here, Duncan. We'll put you in the hot seat.
Cool.
And if they flip the screen over, then we'll field the questions through the Twitter handle. So go to the hashtag TGS_RBI, and we'll try to get through them as fast as possible. So thank you. Oh, and cool. I was telling somebody last night, I don't know if you know Bruce Linton, the CEO of Canopy Growth. So they were the largest cannabis company. And he came saying, I don't know what this thing is, but I know there's smart people here. And he just put up a job description. Says, so if anybody wants to be my CMO, I'm taking, and he walked out here with 17 applications. So if you need 5 people, I think you painted a pretty compelling picture for what your company is all about. What you didn't do was clarify what's your role in all of this. You got multiple countries, multiple brands, multiple challenges. What is Duncan doing when he goes to work?
Yeah, so when I joined the company, the CEO said, kind of, what do you want to do? And I said, everything. What do you want me to do? And he's like, everything. So I really wanted to take a role that for the next decade lets me play outside of Canada, but I also wanted to keep a big foot inside of Canada, which is why I love this brand. And we said, let's call it Chief Corporate Officer. So with the CFO, I do all the investor meetings. The media team comes up to me. The government team comes up to me. I'm working with all of the corporate service level groups and TIMs right now, quality assurance, supply chain, real estate, technology to improve service levels for franchisees. I've got this weird background of government policy, agency advice, retail, private sector, P&L management that lets me, I actually, when I see a burning building, I like running into it to fix stuff. So that's what I'm doing.
Well, that's actually, somebody was creeping you on LinkedIn or something, because it says you've come from a small town in New Brunswick. Is that true?
Fredericton, yep.
You're not from a large city. You came from a political background, not a business one.
Yep.
How has all that perspective given you the skills, or where did you get the skills needed to have this global position?
I think probably my 2 answers to that. You know, my dad grew up in Lakeville Corner, New Brunswick, was the first person to ever go to high school from the community, let alone go on to do multiple degrees at university. So he grew up on a working farm, up every morning at 4 o'clock. So I had the constant barrage growing up of no one in life hands you anything, and the only way that you will get anything is to work harder than everybody around you. So I'd say that, you can get that in big town too, so I'm not saying that's unique to small town, but I think growing up near the family farm, it kind of reinforced that. And I think my first job with Frank McKenna, like the guy was and is a master communicator. And the first thing I learned from him is you can be the smartest business person in the room, but if you can't explain what the problem is and can't explain what the solution is and get people behind you, you're screwed. So a lot of people look at communications as kind of like a fluffy, pony and balloons, kind of thing. McKenna looked at communications as central to all business strategy, and that really kind of formed my view on business.
What was the name of the Burger King president, the guy that you said was one of the most highly decorated?
The CMO, Fernando Machado.
So, and I believe Burger King was voted by somebody, Ad Age perhaps, as the brand of the decade.
Yeah, at Cannes, this last year they announced a new award called the most creative brand on the planet, and IKEA came third, and Nike came second, and Burger King came first.
Yeah. So we're here talking about some of the Tim Hortons stuff, but go on a tangent for a minute. What have you seen about the Burger King culture or the Burger King creative team that has allowed them to get that sort of accolade?
I think being in second place for the Burger King team is fun because Tim's has this dominant market share, and it means that everyone's always after your market share. Burger King is always swinging at the top guy, looking to steal market share. So you don't have to be quite as safe. You can be a little bit more creative. You can be a little bit more out there, like Moldy Whopper. I think it gives them a ton of creative freedom. I think the other one is Popeyes. And look, the lesson at Popeyes on the chicken sandwich was unbelievable. Popeyes tried and failed to launch a chicken sandwich 22 times in its 30-year history. You should be able to do a good chicken sandwich if you're a chicken outfit. And so 2 years ago, the team sat down and said, screw it, we're going to build the best chicken sandwich on the planet, and we're not launching it until it's perfect. It's only 4 ingredients: toasted brioche bun, a buttermilk breaded chicken breast, a spicy or plain mayo, and a cut brined pickle. They went through hundreds of ingredient combinations for 2 years, launched it, got a good bounce when Chick-fil-A tried to troll us and announced with that y'all good tweet, launched the Chicken Wars. Burger King does 220 Whoppers a day. Today, after things have calmed down, we're doing 1,600 chicken sandwiches a day. So
I don't know where. I can't get one. I've been trying to find a chicken sandwich.
It's not in Canada yet. Later this year.
All right.
Later this year, it's good.
There is this cult brand principle of picking a fight, and whether it's Mac PC, Pepsi, Coke, and so that's a great point. If Burger King, the challenger brand, and we're number 2, so we try harder kind of mentality, that's legit in your experience.
And Popeyes is number 2, and in everywhere but Canada, Tim's is number 2 or further back. So it's a bit of a business model for us. We like being number 2 and chasing.
So, I mean, you're a good Canadian. You worked for the other Canadian iconic brand of Canadian Tire. What was the surprise of looking under the hood at Tim Hortons, of either how it successfully wrapped itself in the flag or how it operated that maybe you didn't anticipate or fully respect as an outsider?
I'll tell you the story, and I say it with entire respect for Canadian Tire. Okay, I love Canadian Tire. Canadian Tire is, especially with the 500 franchisees, it is built so sturdily to not make mistakes. And when it does something, it does it extremely, extremely well. It also has 95 years of, I don't want to say bureaucracy, but it has 95 years of history into every process that it has. And the board meetings at Canadian Tire, very serious events. It's a blue chip board. Everything's taken very seriously. Everyone wears suits and ties. There's a large formal boardroom table. I get to RBI, and I could barely wear jeans every day. I'd worn a suit for 9 years. And then I got it down to jeans, and I was wearing my sport coat, and none of them wear sport coats. Everyone just kind of wears the restaurant shirt. And they said, dude, you got to leave your jacket at home. It's embarrassing. I'm like, all right. And then the CEO says, you got to come to your first board meeting. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to screw this up. This is for sure a jacket moment. And he said there's going to be a reception afterwards. At Canadian Tire, the board receptions are serious things. It's catered, it's wonderful, it's arrangement. I go to this board meeting, and I said, what's the reception going to be like? And he's like, there's no reception, dude. We're having Coke and sandwiches. And the board members are serious private equity, extremely smart, proven people from the QSR industry. Everyone is there wearing jeans and a golf shirt, in a really informal boardroom table, beating up the business as strongly as you would ever want a board to beat up the business and ask all the thoughtful questions. And then someone brought in a cafeteria tray with a bunch of cans of Coke, and some chicken sandwiches and some donuts. And we stood around and we popped a can of Coke and talked. And so it's a long way to say the informal nature of the company, but also the focus in the company to say, focus on what's important, and everything else doesn't matter. So the formality of a board, make sure you get the right output of the board meeting. Everything else doesn't matter. Focus on driving sales and profitability and growing the company.
Those 5 principles that you share that I guess you sort of reverse engineered or sort of codified from Tim Hortons because they weren't in existence in any formal way, if I understood you correctly, right? So you guys put them to pen to paper. There's nothing particularly Canadian about those, and yet Tim Hortons remains this sort of X factor of Canadian. And as you expand, is there something that is replicatable outside of this country that will make it increasingly beloved?
Yeah, I think Tim's became a Canadian icon because hundreds and then thousands of franchisees over the years made it so on a local level. I don't think Tim's became a Canadian icon because of head office. I think there was some vision from Ron Joyce for sure, but franchisees made it the place that you wanted to go and did all the right things community by community to make you feel good about that. And I think we have work to do with our international franchisees for Tim's to understand this just isn't about brewed coffee against brewed coffee and espresso against espresso and iced coffee against iced coffee. There's like an X factor in Tim's that has made it in Canada more iconic than any other restaurant brand anywhere on the planet. There's one Tim Hortons for every 9,000 Canadians. In urban markets, there's one Tim Hortons for every 3,000 Canadians. You will not see a penetrated restaurant concept like that anywhere on the planet, and it's still profitable with a ton of growth ahead of it.
Would you care to comment at all about how you guys are thinking about the labor and the wage and the minimum wage issues that are really kind of sort of crippling these types of business models?
Yeah, look, it's a tough balance because if I go back to my government policy hat, it's your job as government to make sure that you continue to increase the minimum wage, you continue to have the large majority of the citizens in your region, in your province, in your country, creating wealth, being able to support their families, being able to buy healthy food for their families and afford the things that you need. To do that, you need to drive the economy, and while you're driving the economy, you need to create a bit of a floor to protect people on minimum wage, and Canada does it better than most other countries. If you're a small business owner, you have to absorb that. And this is where government policy sometimes falls apart because they just say, figure it out. They have no idea what that means. Or they say, pass it along. But that means your coffee goes up, your donuts go up, and government leaves it to Tim Hortons and all of our other competitors to try to explain to you we're putting your prices up because government's putting labor up. So it's a tough one to balance. All of the 100,000 people that work in the Tim Hortons work for our 1,500 franchisees. They don't work for the head office. The franchisees know they have to pay a competitive wage. Any one of those 100,000 people could go work at one of our competitors, could go work at Canadian Tire. So in the retail quick service restaurant market, you always have to stay competitive. Very often that's staying ahead of minimum wage. If minimum wage jumps $1 and you have an employee that's been there for a year who's already there, and now that's the new baseline, you have to move everybody up. So it's a challenge. We look for ways to help the franchisees manage profitability. All of them are tough business decisions because someone will say, well, I want to close overnight. And you go, but how important is being open 24/7 to the brand? Some of them say, I'd like to strip down some menu so that later in the evening I only offer a limited menu. You go, but is that what Canadians want out of the brand? So it's there's no easy answers on your questions, but we're actively working on it.
The keynote earlier talked about alternative labor models and the gig worker and the distributed workforce and whatnot. Have you guys considered any option where people are cross-trained and can pick up shifts across brands or across skill sets, really leverage your size?
Yes, but you know, the nature of working in a quick service restaurant or the nature of working in retail, there's a lot of those jobs are part-time and you rely on part-time folks. We're seeing things like in Quebec right now, in some communities the unemployment rate is like 1%. If it's at the point, not just with us, but everybody, if someone doesn't show up for their shift, you're closing a restaurant at 4 p.m. in the afternoon. So access to labor is a big issue, and at some point, government needs to be engaged, to say it can't just always be government wins votes by putting in place the right and popular things to do, like minimum wage, and then point to business and say, you all figure it out on your own. Because there's limited options to small business owners to do that.
Favorite Tim Hortons donut?
Donut, I like anything glazed, so sour cream
Sour
glaze.
cream glaze. Old-fashioned sour cream glaze?
My go-to is the bacon sausage breakfast wrap.
Very good. Ladies and gentlemen, Duncan Fulton, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.